Hey, you guys, I'm Venus Monique from the hit crime drama Vindication, and you guys should definitely make sure you're catching the Maurice Brown Show on Roku TV.
Yeah, hello everybody and welcome to the Maurice Brown Show. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show an exceptionally gifted comedian who uses his skills to help audiences to discover and activate their purpose. This skill has landed him on stages like The Tonight Show on NBC, TEDx Talks, and Jimmy Kimmel Live. You can find him in Sony Pictures' War Room, as well as starring roles in Selfie Dead, Laughing on Purpose, and More Than Funny. Please welcome the very funny, the very talented comedian, actor, Michael Jr. What's up, Mike? How are you?
Yo, what's up, man? How are you doing? More to the Reese, to the Brown. Thanks for having me, bro. Appreciate it.
Hey, man, I appreciate you being on, man. I tell you, as a fellow comedian, the pandemic slowed a lot of action down for us. Clearly, you've been able to keep things moving, but I mean, how have you, up to this point, been navigating through the pandemic as a comic?
Well, I'm excited, man, because I had been working for a little while to actually cut back on events. I've been doing a lot of, probably too many. I felt like I wanted to cut back at least 70% of my events, just because I love being home with my family. Like, it's the best. So, So we actually came up with this thing called a digital comedy show because we get a lot of requests in for me to come and do events, but I couldn't do all of the events. So we came up with this way where we could help people bring some funny to them just by doing a digital version of Michael Jr., so to speak. So we came up with this 6 months before the pandemic hit. Then it started moving and people started liking it. Then when the pandemic hit, it was like boom, and the thing just took off in a big way. So it worked out really great, actually. I felt really good about what ended up taking place, so it was pretty dope.
So you have a book out now and a podcast called Funny How Life Works. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a book and it's a podcast.
Yeah, right.
No. Okay. So I wrote the book Funny How Life Works. It's stories from my life that are funny, but we use them to pivot and teach people how to do life better, or maybe they can learn from some things I've done. Okay. But the reason behind it is because whenever you laugh, your heart is open and you can retain more information. So if the stories are funny and we just felt like it could. Funny How Life Works podcast is we use funny to help people understand how life works.
Yes.
And it's going really, really well. I'm super excited about how it's turning out so far.
So I saw you do an interview not too long ago about an experience you had, because you have a philosophy of, instead of taking from the crowd, you want to give something to the crowd. You want to give something back. And you were talking about, and I would correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that this is based on getting on stage and just trusting the Holy Spirit to like lead you into whatever it is you're going to say, whatever it is you're going to do. But I heard you talking about that, and I've shared it with some fellow comedians on Pryor shows. And you had an interesting story, Mike. You were talking about how you went into a prison and you didn't know what you were going to say, really.
Yeah.
You care to just expound on that story a little bit?
Yeah, so the shift between getting laughs and giving laughs actually took place before I hit the stage, where I did a prayer, and I felt like God gave me a shift, a change in mindset, where instead of trying to get laughs from people, the question I should be asking is, how could I give them an opportunity to laugh? Because when you're giving something to somebody, believe it or not, the pressure is actually off of you. Like, there's no pressure because you just have a gift that you're looking to present to people.
Yeah.
So once I understood that, it actually became a lot easier. But prior to that, I was just trying to get. But as soon as I started asking a different question, which is how could I give laughs, I started seeing different opportunities, such as the prison that you mentioned. So I walked into this prison, and I have a nonprofit now called Funny for the Forgotten, where we go to prisons and homeless shelters and abused children's places, and we go there and we take comedy to them. But I'm going to this prison, and it's one of my first times ever in prison. And I walk
Okay.
in, and the prison warden takes my belt from me. He's like, "You can't have a belt. Somebody might try to hang you." I'm like,
Wow.
like, why can't they just boo me like regular people? Why they gotta be so violent about it? That's why they locked up right now. Like, so I'm a little concerned about this, and they're like really concerned because I'm in prison and my pants loose. Like, there's just nothing good about this whole thing at all.
There's
So I'm
nothing
walking
good
into the
about that,
prison,
Mike.
and some of you might know when you walk through a prison, the bars they open in front of you, and then they close behind you. You take a few more steps, some more set of bars. They open, and they close. Like, some of y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. Welcome home. Anyway, so I walk into this prison, and I'm scared for real. I need a joke immediately. But and I don't know what I'm saying. I got prison guards all around me. Like, I got 7 or 8 prison guards around me at first.
Wow.
Every few sets of bars, these cats start dropping off, like slowly but surely, till I get to the end, and it's me and one dude. And he like, "All right,
Yeah.
man, it's as far as I go." I'm like, "What you mean this is? What do you mean it's as far as you? What are you talking about? Like, nobody told me this when they filled out the form. Like, nobody told." So I get there, and there's a
Yeah.
little. They give me a little black box with a pin in it, and they put it on my pants. And they said, if anyone tries to attack you, you just pull the pin out, and all the guards will come in and help.
Wow.
Like, that's the plan? Like that's the whole plan. I'm creative too, so in my mind, I'm thinking, man, this could be really like one dude. His job is to hold the pin in. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen. So I'm walking in there, and I need a joke immediately, and I don't have a joke coming to my head. Like, I have no jokes coming to my head, and I'm walking in, and there's a big circle of prisoners. They all got on pink jumpsuits too, and I know you would think, wow, why don't I just say something about them jumpsuits? I ain't saying nothing about them jumpsuits. Like, these cats, like, that's not going to be funny at all. So I
No.
walk in, and keep in mind, there's no stage, there's no glass. We're not doing comedy on the phone. We're not just. I don't know why they do that in prison movie. They always. Anyway, so I walk in there, and they're all in a circle, and I got like 3 steps left before I know I got to bring the funny, or I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm walking in, and I need a joke immediately, but I got no jokes popping in my head. I don't know how I'm going to start, and I walk in. And I got 2 steps left. I got 1 step left. I lift this foot up, and I still got nothing pop. I had 1 joke pop up. I was going to be like, you know what? You guys are a captive audience. I just want to say that. But I didn't feel a peace in my spirit about starting with that joke. So I walk in. I got 1 foot in the air, my last step, and I set it down. And for real, Maurice, sitting right in front of me is a white dude with a white beard named Moses. I was like, wow, thanks, Lord. And I said these words, and the whole place exploded in a laughter. We had an amazing time. I said, Moses, here's what I want you to do. When you see the prison warden, I want you to look him in his eye. I want you to look him right in his eye, and I want you to say, let my people go. And the place explodes and laughs. We had a great time. Shortly after that is when we start the nonprofit, and now we get to do those types of shows, making laughter commonplace and uncommon places funny for the forgotten.org. So it's really cool, man. I love what I get to do.
Wow, man, that is an amazing story of faith. And, Mike, the thing is, you're such a good comic. One would tend to believe that, that's Michael Jr. Of course, he can pull something like that off. But, as a comedian that it's a very unpredictable craft. You don't know what you're going to run into when you do a show.
And you have no idea.
You have no idea what's going to happen. I did a show once, Mike, and I'm doing a set. There's this heckler, this female heckler in the back. I mean, dude, she's a witch. It was that bad. And, man, I got up there. By the time I got up there, she stopped. And I'm like, okay, fine. Man. So I keep going, and then she gets up and comes to the front, sits down in front of me. And I'm going, okay, it's coming now. And I got through the set. She never said a word, Mike. And, I had a good set, got the applause and went off stage. Then she motions me over. She says, I want you to know I appreciate what you were talking about up there. And keep in mind, Mike, I didn't mention this, but I do a lot of shows with profane comics. So I'm the only clean comedian there that night. And she said, what you were talking about really impacted me and made me realize that I need to make better choices in my life because I'm being violently abused in my marriage. And I was making jokes about my family. And she just saw some normalcy. It was just clean, basic family stuff, but it made her shut up.
Wow.
And just take account of her own life. It impacted her. And I just share that story
Wow,
to
that's
say
awesome.
it is awesome, Mike. And then you go, okay, well, you never know how God's going to use you. You know, you just going up
Wow.
there and you're hoping that this is, hey, oh, that's a clean dude. Oh, he loves the Lord. You know, that's great. But are you going to change your life? You know, and that's the whole
That's
point.
what I'm
So just
talking
to
about.
piggyback
That's
on what
good.
you were saying.
That is great,
So
man.
we're,
Yeah.
we're doing that. God's got us doing this for a reason, Mike. There's no question about that, man. You help me to understand when I get up there, there's a reason that you're there. God's going to use you. Be open to however He wants to use you to impact a life.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. That's good, man.
yeah, it's amazing, man. I mean, of course, I'm no Michael Jr. dude, but I've tried to make it, man. I've tried, but I want to say, and I know you're really good at comedy, and you probably had this question asked to you many times. But look, man, what motivates you to get on stage and make a bunch of strangers laugh, Mike?
Man, I love people. Like I really,
Okay.
really, really just love people. And the people show up to my comedy events anywhere in the country. I think I was just in San Diego and then I'm came home and I'm going to Alaska or something. I love people though.
Okay.
So just because people will show up to a show because they want to laugh, but that may
Yeah.
not be what they really need.
Right.
So I'm me. I decided to be sensitive enough to listen in between the gaps. So while people are laughing, I'm actually listening between the gaps to try to find out what they really might need. And if I can help
Yeah.
make a deposit up to whatever that is, then that's what I want to do. I want to help people as much as I possibly can from the stage or whatever God is calling me to do at whatever moment.
My wife and I watched you recently in the film Selfie Dead, produced by Paul Long, who's a good friend of mine. He's a good guy. Uh, how was it transitioning? Because you were in an emotional role. From time to time, you had some scenes that were fairly emotional. Certainly, a departure from doing stand up comedy. So what was it like having to do some scenes like that?
It was actually pretty cool, man. I've always known that I can get emotional if I need to.
Yeah,
So it was really cool to be able to do it and see it on camera and then floating in and out of the comedy as well. Like we're doing
yeah,
some funny stuff and then we're doing emotional, but things get pretty emotional even at my comedy shows. Like it's not rare at all for people to leave my comedy show or go to intermission with tears in their eyes, tears of joy and happiness or tears from laughing or whatever. So I really believe comedy and laughter or any emotion at all, once you have that emotion, whatever information is attached to it is going to stick a lot longer. It's going to go a lot deeper. So
yeah.
comedy for me is really like a vehicle. It's not necessarily the destination. It's just a vehicle. So I'm gonna ride that vehicle as long as I can, as hard as I can, to help as many people as I possibly can.
When did it come about for you, Mike, to start to look at comedy from that standpoint? I mean, you've been doing comedy for quite a while. You've done a lot of secular rooms, and when did it occur to you that, hey, look, I got to start going at this from a different perspective? How long ago was it that actually occurred
Yeah,
to
I
you,
think
or
it
when the
was.
Holy Spirit spoke to you to do that?
I think it might have been 12 or 15 years ago, maybe longer than that, man. It was
Oh,
literally
wow.
outside that club
Yeah.
right before I got on stage one night in Hermosa Beach, a club right outside of Los Angeles. Right before I got on stage, I did a prayer, and I felt like God said, instead of trying to get laughs from people, I want you to go up there and give them an opportunity to laugh. So I go up on
Wow.
stage and I do my set, and I had a great set. I was super relaxed. I wasn't trying to
Yeah.
be funny at all, and I let
Yeah.
the audience kind of come to me. But it was that same night that I walk outside the club, and I remember hanging out with the people, and they want pictures and whatnot. And I look across the street, and there was a homeless guy across the street. I had never ever seen a homeless guy outside this club before, ever. But that doesn't mean he wasn't there before.
Right.
That just means before my mindset was, how could I get laughs from people? So why would I notice him? But I started asking a different question, and I got different answers. I started seeing what it was I was asking about. So the same thing, your viewers right now, or anybody listening to this, like if you ask, questions are powerful. You got to ask yourself, what questions are you asking? Because if I say to you, when was the last time you saw the color yellow or the color orange? If I say, when was the last time you saw the color orange? you'll start, without even knowing it sometimes, you'll start to move your eyes around and see if there's any orange in the room where you are.
Yeah.
Even though it was there all along, and you've probably been in that room many times, but you never noticed it before. But now that I've mentioned it, now you see it because I asked that question. So the key becomes, what question should you be asking so you can get the answers that you're really looking for versus just going whatever question is your default.
Out of curiosity, Mike, how did you come to salvation in Christ?
Oh, it's the same way for me as it is everybody else. I'm bleeding my heart, and then I confess with my mouth. I don't know how hard work for people who got a gray beard, but
Yeah.
hey, so are you always going to? Because your logo looks kind of cool, but you can't. You're not gonna be able to cut your beard, take that hat off at all. Like it's. You're just gonna have to say you gotta have a hat and the beard because your logo is. I see it. It's dope. You got to keep this.
Oh, I got to keep it now. Well, the thing is, I don't think there's anything I can do about it, Mike. I don't think it's going to change. It's going to stay white. You know.
I mean, but even if you wanted to cut it though, because now your logo don't fit because you cut your beard, like your logo.
You know what? I'm stuck, Mike. I can't change.
You are. And if somebody steal your hat, like then where you at? Like somebody got your hat, they're gonna be like, "Hey, there go Maurice." Oh, that ain't him. That ain't him. You got a hat.
Well, thank goodness I got about 10 or 11 of these in reserve.
10 or 11, but you're not bringing them. You're not taking 10 or 11 with you, right? You're at the mall. The wind blow that hat off. They're gonna be like, "Can I get your autograph?" Oh, never mind. It's somebody different. I'm just saying, you should think that through because it could happen.
It could happen, Mike. That's a great point, dude. Let me ask you something. Being a Christian comic, how do you deal with hecklers? Because I know you do secular rooms. How do you deal with that?
Man, so hecklers, I've come to learn, is actually a good thing. Meaning, what is a heckler? A heckler is somebody who is stepping into your area of influence and trying to take you off of your game.
Yes, sir.
So one of my best ways to deal with a heckler is, first of all, my comedy on stage isn't really heckler conducive. I'm more of because I take my time in between.
Okay.
It takes more courage to interrupt. I know this will sound weird or probably be a little heady, but you'll get it because you do comedy. But some of your listeners are like, "What do you mean?" But because because I use the silence so well, the heckler have to have something amazing to say to fit in that gap in a way that is great. But what happens is your audience will really just mock you. So if you're really automated or you're talking really fast, it almost gives them permission to be animated and talk really, really fast. It's like when you walk up to somebody and you whisper, you're like, "Hey, what time?" And then they just start whispering too. So, but they don't even know why they're whispering. They're just doing it because you were. So they have a tendency to mirror you. My style of comedy doesn't really, it's not really heckler friendly, but I do like hecklers. What I mean is it just makes me stronger. Like sometimes if I have to do an event and it's not perfect, like some stuff is going on, people are eating food or whatever the case is, those are some of my favorite events because I know that it makes me stronger. And hecklers, if you're watching right now and you're not a comedian, I'm not just talking about doggone comedic hecklers or people at a comedy show. Everyone has hecklers in life. In fact, if you don't have any hecklers, you're probably not doing what it is you're called to do. You're doing something safe instead of doing what you're really supposed to be doing. A heckler should be confirmation that you're on the right path, except if the heckler is you, because sometimes you can heckle yourself. There's something great that God has called you to. You know you're supposed to accomplish it, and you keep talking to yourself like, "Nah, I'm not the one. I can't really do that. I'm not good enough." That is your own heckler, and you have to address that heckler and make it sit down so you can get done what you're supposed to get done as well.
Man, what a great point that is, because we doubt ourselves and we're trying to get to a level, and you can talk yourself out of a good set. Where's your headspace? Because I've always believed, Mike, that the number one thing a comic has to do is make sure. I don't care how good your material is. I don't care about your pacing and the punchlines that you're gonna. The number one thing, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to be in the right headspace. So if I'm feeling good, I'm feeling great. I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad to see all you guys. I'm just glad to be right here in this spot right now. That's the number one thing to me. because
to be
I've
fully
heard
present to where you are versus where you're not. Because if you're thinking about where you're not,
exactly,
it's going to be hard to really, because the audience can kind of collectively feel that you're not there, that you're
exactly.
doing the math about something different. Now, I'll move, meaning I'll be in a room and I may be thinking about what joke number 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 might be, but I'm
Yeah.
still in the room present with you as well, because I am doing the math. I used to actually go 7 jokes. You do the same thing when you're on stage. I used to actually go like several jokes ahead of where I am right now. I used to go
Yeah.
7 jokes ahead, but when I changed my question to what can I give, I can only really go 3 jokes ahead now, because I'm
Okay.
listening in between the gaps and I'm asking the question, what can I give to this audience? So that's a big deal for me to be able to to know that I'm providing what they really need, not just what they think they want.
I got to ask you this, Mike. Give me a good heckler story where you just shut him down.
I was on stage once in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Well, before that, I was in Flint, Michigan. At the time, Flint, Michigan was the murder capital of the world, and they was proud of
Wow.
it too. Like they proud. So they used to have this comedy show called. They used to have a talent show called the Super Show,
Okay.
and it'd be like 3,000 Flintstones. That's what they call themselves in the audience. And I'm brand new. I've been doing comedy for like a year or something.
Okay.
And you go up on stage and they was having a boo fest. Boo! Boo. Like
Oh
they just
man.
having a boo fest. And
Yeah.
and this was before they started using, they didn't have any metal detectors. So this place was
Yeah.
like dangerous. They was booing everybody. And
Oh
then
my
I'm
gosh.
talking about little kids going out there and they booing little kids. People singing worship
Oh,
songs and
terrible.
booing
That's
them.
terrible. Yeah. Man.
So I'm in the back and I'm number like 17 on the list. I'm number 17, and the people cutting out fast too. Like you're supposed to do 5 minutes. Somebody did a 30 seconds and left. I'm like, snap, it's coming up. Then I remember this little girl who was going to ballet dance. She
Yeah.
went out there and she came back out crying. And I'm
Oh man.
backstage. She comes backstage crying. And then this other little girl said to
Oh.
her mom, Mommy, I don't want to go out there. And dude, I don't know what happened, but something welled up in me like the Grinch. Remember when his heart got all big and he was like, I got to
Yeah, I remember.
something welled up in me, and I was like, man, I'm going out there. I said, I'll go next. And I go out
Yeah.
there, and I get heckled by this dude in the back of the, I mean, this place is huge, 3,000 people. This dude
Yeah.
heckles me. You better be funny, beep, beep, beep. That's what he said.
Yeah.
And then I addressed him and I said, I just got heckled by the darkest dude in the room. I said, you're so dark skinned, I bet if you get a motorcycle, if you rode a motorcycle, you get a ticket for tinted windows. Boom. Place explodes in laughter, right? I just made that joke up on the spot. It exploded in
Yeah.
laughter. I finished my setup. I actually took second place. There was a little kid playing dancing like Michael Jackson took first place. But after I went on stage, the entire audience listened to everybody else. Like nobody else got booed.
Yeah.
So after that show, somebody asked
Wow.
me. So that was one of my first heckler experiences that was able to go pretty. It went pretty well. I was excited about it.
Was
Well,
that
at the
was
time, I
that
was
the
afraid.
moment? Okay. Was that the moment, Mike? Because you said you'd only been doing comedy for about a year at that point. Was that the moment when you pretty much knew that you were made for comedy?
No, 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 no. It was attached to that moment. So I had somebody ask me. They said, when will you know that you're professional as a comedian? When will you know you're professional? And I thought it was after I get a certain amount of money or after I do a certain size audience. I passed
Yeah.
all those things up, and I still didn't feel like I was a professional. So we fast forward maybe 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 years later, and I'm doing a show in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I'm on
Okay.
stage, and I get heckled by this guy in the back of the room. And he got more twang than I can explain. He was like, Michael Jr., I was wondering, why do all black people look alike? That's what he said to me, for
Oh
real.
man.
So the whole crowd freezes. They don't know how I'm going to respond. It's like a mostly white audience. They don't know if I'm going to get mad, throw a chair. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't know what I was going to do. When I said these words, I was hearing them for the first time. He said, Michael Jr., I was wondering, why do all black people look alike? I was like, we don't all look alike. You just got to cut the eye holes in your sheet a lot bigger. Boom. Place explodes in laughter. The dude who said it to me stands up on his chair and gives me a standing ovation with the rest of the room.
Wow.
It was at that exact moment that I knew I was a professional. Like that was the moment.
Yeah, you know what? And the beautiful thing is, Mike, and I know that you have seen comedians that are in the secular world that live to flour and fry a heckler. I mean, they just destroy them. But the fact that you do it without going to the dark side, see, that's the beauty in it. Like you just use your intellect without using any shock word.
Thanks, man.
It might even be even more effective. I think people respect comics that don't have to. And that's not. Listen, I'm not going to get up here and judge. Comics that do. If that's what they do, that's what they do. We happen to be men of God, so we do what we do. But I'm just saying, when you use that stuff, it doesn't take as much intellect as when you eliminate those words and just do basic comedy.
Absolutely. And I would say as well, though, on the reverse, and I'm just thinking about this right now from having this conversation. I think when people use those words, the 4-letter words, I don't think it necessarily takes away from their intellect. I just think that they're not using it in that moment. Like one of the greats for me was Bernie Mac, who cursed a lot.
Yeah.
But hysterical, very funny, super crazy smart, like crazy smart, intelligent, knows how to get it done. I just choose to, like, I when I first started doing comedy, not when I first started doing it, when my kids were old enough to understand what I was doing, I explained to them, I said, anything I ever say on stage, you'll be able to repeat it. And I remember one time taking my kids to the club with me, the same club in Hermosa Beach. And we were going to hang out and get some food, and then they were going to watch my show. But at that particular night, Chris Rock was in the room, and some other comedians of his caliber were in the green room. Okay. And then my kids came back for a minute, and then they went into this other side green room and they started eating their food. And I'm sitting back there with all of them. And then I remember these guys having a conversation with me, and they said, "Man, I don't even know how I'm explaining to my kids what I do." Like they had never had that conversation with their kids about what it is they do for comedy. And I had never thought about having to have that conversation, because one day it's not like they're never going to know. They're going to find out at some point. So I always try to look at it from both perspectives to see how people are, because whatever you've been through, I mean, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth is going to speak. So people got some stuff in their heart, so that stuff has to come out.
Yes. I totally agree with that. I mean, listen, dude, my favorite comedian of all time is Richard Pryor. I'm just going to tell you. And Richard Pryor was, just to piggyback again on what you were just saying about speaking your truth, that he had to get that stuff out because he lived all of that stuff. He wasn't up there just saying it for shock value. That's his life. You know what I mean? that Richard Pryor was talking about stuff he lived through. And as you said, he had to get it out, and it was hilarious. And that's where he was. But I just think that, again, God uses us to present a different approach to it. Praise God, we are not carrying the kind of baggage. I know I'm not. I can't even talk. God's blessing. I don't have anything like that to say, so I'm not going to be on that line. But again, God uses people like ourselves. But Mike, I want to ask you this, and this is a question that I could never imagine, but I'm going to ask you because you're a comic. I mean, as a comedian, you can't avoid it. It just happens. What is your worst bombing experience?
Worst bombing? You know what? I always think back to, I guess it wasn't a bomb. I did an event at a college. Okay. And, when kids go to college, I think it was mostly freshmen in there. Yeah. They're very, very passionate about whatever's in front of them. Yeah. Like anything. So I went up there and I did my set, and it was funny because I did my set and it went well, as in about 60% of the room was laughing. Probably 70% of the room was laughing.
That's pretty good.
There was a 30% that just wasn't laughing at all. Okay. What was going on is I'm doing my set, and the girls are laughing and enjoying my set. These dudes was upset because the girls was laughing.
Okay.
So
interesting.
I do my set. I have fun. People have fun. But then these dudes is like, you know what, man? We should boo him. When we get off stage, let's boo him. So I'm off stage, and they said, we should boo him out the door. Literally, they said, we're going to boo him out the door. Yeah. And then that's what they did. Like, I get ready to leave, and they start saying, boo. And I was like, well, and I held up the check. I was like, hey, well, thanks for your tuition. I appreciate this, man. That was the worst. That's all I could really remember as far as a bad show. Unless I blocked out something worse. which I probably did.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be bringing it up if I did, man. Why are you trying to get me to bring up the memories? It's hurt.
Well, you know what, Mike? I tell you what, dude. There are not a lot of comics that can really, survive without. But you're one. I can't. That's why I asked, because I really cannot imagine. You're such a quick-witted person that I find it very hard to believe that you could bomb. But
Well, here's what happens, man. Here's what I think happens is if you can only really like. It's really about making the necessary adjustments. Like anytime I perform, I always go in the room first, just so I can feel the audience. And once I can see what their temperament is, I can kind of get a gauge for what they will want, even if I don't have any material set up. Like I can kind of get a feel for what to do, especially if I know who went on before me. Like I went on at especially when people go on before me, because now they did the setup for me. And then and the fact that if I do a joke and it's not great, first of all, I'm not going to do a not strong joke at the beginning. But I think you have to be okay. I think what happens sometimes is a comedian will think, okay, I got to go up there. I'm going to do the best set I can. No. You should hope you could do the best set you can, because your set is just that. It's what you have set to do. Yeah. But you got to get into the set first. Like first you got to go up there and allow and kind of know the audience enough so you can get into your set. But if you go up there and say, I'm about to do this awesome set, it's going to be harder, because if you get heckled or for some reason they're not really feeling you, now you're already in your set and they don't like you. And now you don't know how to move or how to make any adjustments. I show up as agile as I could possibly be. And I got more agile once I started asking the question, what can I give to my audience? Because when you have a gift for someone, this is the greatest adjustment I've ever made in comedy. Is once I started asking, what can I give to my audience, all the pressure went away. Because when you have a gift, your job is to present the gift. It doesn't even matter how they respond to it. It's simply to present the gift. So once I started just presenting the gift, my show got so much better. I got so much more confident. I got the audience enjoyed the show. They laughed so much harder, which you would think is the opposite, because you think I'll go up there, I'm gonna try to do perfect. I'm going up there and trying to deliver what I'm supposed to deliver, not be perfect, because maybe they don't need to see somebody who's perfect. Maybe they need to see somebody who's a little weak, a little rusty, and aware of it as well, or just not polished, because they're not polished either. And maybe in some way that connects with them in a way it wouldn't have otherwise.
That kind of leads me into my next question. Maybe you just answered it, but I'm going to ask anyway. What's the biggest thing about stand-up comedy, since you've been involved over the years, that you have learned that's made you a better comic? Maybe that what you just said, I don't know, but just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I would have to say the biggest aha moment for sure about comedy is the fact that I said this yesterday, I think, to someone else, to my wife. I don't know who I was talking about it, but I don't really think there's a such thing or if there is, it's just a few, and it's not me. Such thing as a pure stand-up comedian. I just don't think that's a real thing. I don't necessarily think that God designed somebody to be a stand-up comedian. What I mean is comedy is a seasoning. It is not the meal. It's a vehicle. It is not the destination. So for me, I know that I'm called to comedically inspire people to walk in purpose, to live their best life. If I'm here to help you live your best life, then that's what I want to do. And it just so happens I have this sense of humor that can make it even more palatable for you. But at the end of it, at the beginning and the middle, I am called to use comedy to help you live your best possible life. So that's what I'm called to do. And I think that's the case with everyone. It's just that a lot of people don't know it. Therefore, they will only serve seasoning to people. And as you know, after a while, seasoning can get a little bitter if it's just seasoning. What I mean is we all know some of the greats in comedy, as you would say, who they end up finding in a hotel room, or we find out they were miserable, and they end up taking their own life, like time and time. Like we see it all the time. They end up slapping the lady at Target. Like what is happening? It's because they reached for this level. They got there with comedy, and they realized comedy don't love you. Comedy is a seasoning. It's not a meal. Like you sitting here trying to. It's just a seasoning. So
Yes.
understanding that was a big deal for me. And now knowing that it's a seasoning, I want to sprinkle that seasoning on whatever I feel like God is telling me to put in front of the people.
Mike, let me ask you something. When you say you're giving something to the audience, you're giving them a gift. Do you base your jokes or your punchlines or your material on, okay, this is about conveying a point, or do you just kind of just go with it?
No, because a point sounds like like it's a destination on my head. So when I get on
Okay.
stage, I have a plan in front of me. I kind of know what I'm gonna do. I have notes in my head. I even maybe have someone on a monitor, but that's just a map. That's
Okay.
not where I don't know if that's where I'm gonna go or where I'm gonna end up. It's just a map so I can get back to where I'm supposed to go. The
Okay.
main thing I'm focusing on most is listening in between the gaps to find out what people need. I did a show in Nashville, and when I did my TED talk, I talk about how comedy works. How first there's a setup and there's a punchline. George Wallace said
Yeah.
comedy is AB3, right? So there's
Yeah.
a setup and there's a punchline. The setup is when a comedian makes you think in one direction. The punchline is when he changes that direction in a way you're not expecting. You catch on to the change. The results of revelation, fulfillment, and joy expressed through laughter. Well, life is the same way. There's a setup and there's a punchline. The setup is what you receive, but your punchline is about what you're called to deliver. And a lot of people in life know their setup, but not everyone knows their punchline. So they'll feel like something's missing. And they'll think what they need to fill that void. They think they need more setup. If I could just get a house, if I could just get more money, if I could get a degree, if I could get married, what you really need to know is what is your punchline. So I explained that to one of my audiences one night in Nashville, and I'm doing the set, and then I felt like while I'm listening between the gaps, I felt like God told me to bring this lady up on stage. I don't know this lady. I work alone. Why would I bring her
Yeah.
up on stage? So I do
Yeah.
another joke and I feel it again. Bring her up on stage. Now listen, I'm gonna do whatever I feel like that thing is. So I look and I notice she's not even looking at me. She's deaf. Like
Yeah.
she's looking at the sign language lady. I don't know sign language. I know this right here and another one before I was a Christian. That's all I got, right?
Yeah.
So I feel it again, bring this lady up on stage. And I see this lady and I'm like, man, okay. So I asked the sign language lady, I said, hey, could you ask her to come up on stage, please? So I just pointed at her. She comes up on stage as a white lady. She's like 54 years old or so.
Yeah.
She's standing next to me, kind of, and I said something to her. I had never, now keep in mind, Maurice, I had never done this before this, and I haven't done it since.
Okay.
I said to her, to the sign language, I said, hey, can you ask her what is her biggest need? Never done that before.
Okay.
She signs
Okay.
over, she signs back. She says she doesn't have any needs. She's okay. I was like, nah, because I
Yeah.
know what I felt in between the gaps. I said, ask her again. So she signs over, she
Okay.
signs back. She says, well, her and her husband haven't been able to go on vacation in over 11 years, not even for a weekend, and they could really use some time away. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So what normally happens? Normally we pass the hat around, right? Not your hat because people
Yeah.
would know who you were. We just pass the hat around, collect a bunch of money, and
Yeah.
but we've all seen that before. The greatest punchlines are the ones you never see coming, right?
Yes.
So all I did was ask the next question. I was like, well, why haven't she been on vacation? So she signs over, she signs back. She says, well, her and her husband, they have a special needs child, and they can't afford a nurse who's qualified who could take care of the child in a way where they feel comfortable and they can leave. I was like, okay. So Maurice, I walked to the edge of the stage and I turned to my audience. I'm in Nashville. I don't live in Nashville. I don't know these people. I live in Dallas. I
Yeah.
said, where is the special needs nurse who can deliver their punchline? There's 2,200 people in this room. Place is quiet, silent. We were just laughing 4 minutes earlier. They tripping, just like I'm tripping, because I wasn't planning on doing this. So
Yeah.
I said it again.
Yeah.
I said, where is the special needs nurse who can deliver their punchline? And you hear a voice come from the top balcony. And this lady says, here I am. She comes walking down. And we introduce them. And they live 30 minutes from each other. And the whole room is done. Like we're
Wow.
done. But what really happened, Maurice? Like what really happened? Someone showed up with their setup, willing to deliver a punchline, and someone else was willing to receive it. And as a result of it, we got one of the more powerful moments that has happened in my comedy career. But
Yeah.
again, it's because I was trying to deliver what I really felt like people needed as opposed to what they just wanted. They came for laughs, but because I'm listening between the gaps, I feel like there's more to give, and I was able to give it. And by the way, everybody watching this right now, everybody listening to this, or whatever you may be doing, whatever you do in life, there's gaps. what question are you asking in between the gaps? Are you asking what can I get? Or are you asking what can I give? And if you don't know the answer to that question, I think you know the answer to that question. By default, since the fruit, we've been asking what can we get? If you
Yeah.
shift your question to what can you give, you're going to get some different answers and start to notice the orange in the room that you didn't see before, because there's opportunities right around you to really deliver to somebody who needs you.
Utterly amazing, Mike. Great words of wisdom, my friend. And I tell you, man, when you're operating like that by faith, God can use you. And I mean, I think fear, and I can only speak for myself. Fear keeps you from doing something that you're not prepared to do, even though you know you got to trust God because He's telling you to do something, but you don't do it because you're afraid, and so you don't get to enjoy what it is, you know. But you got to, you know, break through that. I have to break through that part of it because on stage you have this map. You think that, okay, I got to go by my map, you know, and I want to play around with the audience a little bit, but very little. I feel the security blanket to be on my map. And when you're doing what we're doing, man, I'm trying to exercise that muscle of, okay, God, let's just go where I believe you're telling me to go, and I'm not going to fight you.
Yeah, and it's not even about when you first get on stage. It's not about necessarily improvising or playing with the audience. It's really about your approach. So I did an event, it was some years ago, probably 7, 8 years ago. It was at the Ice House, and Arsenio Hall shows up out of nowhere and goes on before my set.
Oh, man.
Now, the Ice House in Pasadena, out there in Los Angeles, I don't know if you've seen it before, but when you walk up on stage, you actually have your back to the audience, and you have to turn around and greet the audience. Now, it's the hottest room in Hollywood. I mean, it's the best club because the laughs hit you so hard.
Yeah.
So I show up that night to do my set, and doggone Arsenio Hall is there. And this ain't a long time ago. This is maybe 7 years ago or so.
Okay.
And Arsenio Hall is there, and the whole room is barking, doing a dog pound. They barking, screaming.
Yeah.
Arsenio goes off, and now it's my turn to go up on stage. Now the crowd is hyped. I'm not really a hype comedian. I'm not going to be all moving and jumping around. You ain't going to be barking. So he goes up on stage, and then I walked up on stage instinctively. I walked up on stage, but my back is to the audience, and I moved extra slow. Instinctively. I didn't understand it until somebody pointed it out to me later.
Okay.
I walk up super slow, and then I slowly turned around. I did not grab the microphone. I just leaned my hand over to the microphone, and I said, "Thanks, man." And the place exploded, and the place starts laughing, right? And then I grabbed the microphone, and I went on with my set.
Yes.
Now that's a lot of doggone energy to follow. If anybody remember the dog pound from Arsenio Hall, that's a lot of doggone energy to follow. But afterwards, I had a friend, another comedian, tell me, he said, "Did you understand what just happened when you went on stage?" I was like, "I think I had a good set." He was like, "Dude, you don't understand. Like, my set was strong." He said, "What you did when you went up on stage is you gave people time to breathe after seeing Arsenio Hall while I was on stage. I walked up extra slow, and this is all instinct. This is all really God showing me how to do this."
Yes, absolutely.
And then I slowly turned around, and he said, "When you did that, what you were saying was, that was Arsenio, this is Michael Jr." And then when I took the mic, as long as I had the mic, everybody forgot about Arsenio. When I put the mic down and they went home, I'm sure the story they told was, "Yo, I saw Arsenio Hall." They weren't telling stories about me. But in that moment, because I was okay just being still in front of the audience, or just being okay with the silence, we were able to have that really cool moment. So I think it's important that everybody watching this right now, that you be okay with the silence. Like, be okay, because God can do some stuff in the silence. There's nothing.
Yes.
It's only awkward silence if you call it awkward silence. Like, other than that, maybe it's an opportunity to grow and to learn something in between those gaps that you normally try to fill with some noise.
Well, Mark Christopher Lawrence, I don't know if you're familiar with him or not.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Mark was on the show about a month ago, and he said that Bill Cosby watched him in his early years of stand-up and said, "Hey, well, what are you in a hurry for? What are you in a rush to do? Slow down and let the audience enjoy your joke. So when they're laughing, let them laugh, and then continue." And he said he took a 7-minute set by listening to Bill Cosby to 25.
Yeah.
You know,
That's good.
just by, hey, just slow down and just let the audience enjoy your joke. That just one
That's good.
little thing, that little minor
Yeah.
adjustment. So there's
Hmm.
so many things. But Mike, I know that you have to get out of here, and I don't want to keep you too long. I know you got a busy
No, you're good,
schedule,
man.
but I definitely appreciate you being on the show, man. And real quick before you get out, if you have enough time, I had an audience member that wanted to ask a
Yeah,
question,
yeah,
and
yeah. I'll take some questions for sure. Go ahead.
okay, good. I appreciate it, man. So we had a question by Dan Knutson. He said, hold on a second, Mike. He said, um, what was the, okay, any stories about how you've had an opportunity to personally introduce someone to Christ as a result of your comedy?
Uh, yeah, man, for sure. Like, I mean, if you look on YouTube, probably in the last 4 years, we've had like over 70,000 people make decisions for Christ at my events.
Okay.
Now, that's not what
Wow.
I do at my events. My events are about, but I also do weekend services at churches. So there's been a right
Yeah.
around 72,000 people over the last four
Okay.
years. So there's a lot of them. There's one, I did an event with uh, Rick Warren and Steve Forbes
Okay.
and somebody else. I only mention those names because when I'm leaving, Rick Warren gave me a copy of his book, The Purpose Driven Life. Then I get on the
Yes.
airplane and I don't really feel like talking. I'm sleepy, right? But I feel like God wants me to talk to this dude next to me.
Okay.
But I'm sleepy and I don't want to talk to
Mm-hmm.
this dude. But I'm on a plane and the Lord said do
Yeah.
something, so I ain't gonna be
There.
disobedient.
There it is. Yes, sir.
So I jump right in with this dude. I'm like, dude, what do you do? And he said, I'm in school to be a doctor. I was like, oh, okay. So do you like being a doctor? I said, is that something you want to do? He said, well, I just want to help people. I said, help people? Any job in the world, every job that exists is a job to help people. Like, no matter what you do, you're going to be helping people. Like, you could be flipping burgers and helping people. I said, well, what do you
Yeah.
really want to do? He said, what do you mean? I said, for example, let's say you like to cook. He said, I love to cook. I was like, no, no, no. Let's say you like to cook gourmet food. He was like, I love cooking gourmet food. And I was like, okay. I said, no, 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 but like professionally. He said, no, 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 I love cooking professionally. I said, so imagine if you came with this idea where you're going to cook gourmet food for homeless people just to give them some dignity from another angle. And he was like, oh, he said, one time I was at my friend's and we were at this golf course and I was able to go in the kitchen. I made this meal, but there was some extra left over. And then I went outside and there was a homeless guy and I gave the food. It was one of the most powerful moments ever. This is what the dude said to me out of nowhere. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, God, I hear you. And then I said, dude, so you're in school to be a doctor because like he's in his third, I don't know, fifth year or something. And
Okay.
I said, dude, so you could serve somebody no matter what, man. I said, listen, here's the thing. I'm sleepy. And I feel like God told me to talk to you about you doing what it is He wants you to do.
Wow.
Like He has
Man, I
something
love it. I
amazing for
love it.
you, and that's why He let me have this conversation with you right now. So if you really want to know who He is and what He has for you, we should do a prayer right now where you receive Jesus, and then it'd be dope. And then he was like, the dude prayed and received Jesus with me on the plane. We not even
Wow.
wheels up yet, right?
Yeah.
My only issue, and I didn't even have his name at this point. It was hilarious actually. So he received Jesus, and then my issue is I don't know what to. Even when I do these events and all these people come forward, I try to only go to churches where they're going to be good stewards with the people, right? Because
Yeah.
now what? All these people come forward. Now what? So there wasn't really a now what for me and him because I really was sleepy, and I can only disciple him for so long on a plane. But I got this book,
Yeah.
Doggone Purpose Driven
Yeah.
Life, signed by Rick Warren, right?
Man.
So I said,
Yep.
dude, you don't understand the value of this book right now because I don't know how many of them are signed. But dude, read this book and then get you a Bible and keep digging. So I give him the book to leave. This dude calls me like 6 months later, blown back. You ain't gonna blah blah blah. You all excited and pumped. It was really an awesome experience on that flight, man. So great question, Daniel. For great question.
Uh,
Thanks for bringing that up. Man. I appreciate it.
do you have time for another one?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Cynthia Johnson says, any advice for Christian female comics on the road?
I mean, what kind of advice you looking for? Like, be careful on the road. Like, I don't know what you, like. There's a bunch of advice. Here's what I would say is it's kind of sad, but female comedians have a tendency to all of the I shouldn't say all the ones I know, but a lot of the female comedians I know have a tendency to eventually in their career when they want to go to the next level, to kind of sell out and go for the low hanging fruit.
Wow.
And the low hanging fruit is never the fruit that God has for you. So you should pick what I would highly recommend you do. I recommend this to anybody, even if you're not female. I recommend you figure out who your people are. What I mean by that is like not your audience, not your what kind of shows you want to do, but who are the people you're called to? Like, is it like who are the people who needs what you have to say? Not the comedy. Everybody wants comedy. That's not a need. It's a want.
Okay.
Who are the people you really are called to? Is it single moms? Is it families? Is it about bringing the family together, the unit? Figure out who those people are, and then maybe even get a picture of them. Let's say it's about helping women, making sure nobody is like women don't have to deal with being molested or just, and then get a picture, right, of who your people are, but get an actual picture that you can look at. Because looking at that picture, either before you go on stage or periodically, whenever, or having it hanging up somewhere in your house, will be a constant reminder of why you're actually doing this. Because if you don't know right now why you're doing it, a new why will show up that looks all shiny, and then you start to say stuff like, well, if I do this, I'll make a bunch of money, then I can take that money, then I can help them people. No. Don't fall into that. Because there's a lot of comedians, male and female, that I know, and you would know as well, who started out on one track, started out doing clean comedy, and then right after a while, the temptation showed up, and they let it all go. So please, Cynthia, don't do that. The temptation is going to be there. It is going to, oh my goodness, it's going to be there. Like for real. Like really. In fact, use the temptation as confirmation that you're headed in the right direction, not that you need to change direction.
And Cynthia is a good comic in the D.C. area up here where I'm located. But now you think that happens more so to female comics?
No, I think it's just more apparent to female comics. I think it happens across the board, but it just, for me, the ones that I know, it just hurts a little more because there's not a lot of hysterical female comics out, just funny in their own right without having to go this way or that way. And I cheer them on, and I want them to be able to do the thing. So, but it doesn't always happen.
So Sharon Lanier, I don't know if you've ever met Sharon. She's a good actress, right? Really good actress. But she wants to know if you got any movies on the horizon coming up.
Oh yeah, I'm supposed to. There's this new one on Netflix. I'm gonna check out probably tomorrow night with my kids. It's gonna be kind of dope. we got somebody else's login, so we're gonna check out. Yeah. No, movies for me. You're talking about me in a movie. Well, I started in Selfie Dad, and then I did War Room. I'm okay with movies, meaning I'll do it if it fits right, but I'm not really that movie. I think I'm gonna be pushing a little more towards television at this point. I think I feel like TV is what's on the horizon on the real. And of course, you guys know I wrote a book. So we're doing this thing every night, or for the next few nights, called Michael Jr. Story Time, where I tell stories straight to camera about my book.
Okay.
Not about the book, because that'd be weird. Hey, once I bought a book. No. Stories from my book, from my life, where I tell the stories and people get to enjoy them that way. So if you want to go to story time, you have to register. They just go to michaeljrstorytime.com and they can register. So I share some of those cool kind of stories. Any other questions?
So, Christy Condor, who's a Christian comedian from Nashville, Tennessee, wants to know what makes you laugh, Mike?
What makes me laugh is awkwardness.
Okay.
Did you feel it just now? You thought it was
I
frozen?
did. I felt that. I felt that.
That's what I just really like awkwardness. It's pretty dope. And I love being around my daughter. All my kids. I got 5 kids. The other day, we were doing a Facebook Live. So every Thursday, we do a Facebook Live, me and my daughter, called Cocoa Thursdays. Because ever since she was like 3 years old, I would take her to get cocoa it started on Tuesday, but every Thursday, I'll take her to get cocoa. So one time, we turned on a video camera, and we recorded our conversation. So now every Thursday around 7:30 a.m., we do these things called Cocoa Thursdays. Well, last Thursday, so we're taking questions from people, Facebook Live work. We're talking to people and kicking it, and they're giving her stars for college. It's pretty dope. So somebody asked her name is Portland. They said, Portland, do you think you want to follow in your dad's footsteps and do comedy? And she's 11 years old. And without missing a beat, she said, no, it's not a very stable career. Like, what that is one of my favorite things to do, is just hang out. In fact, we just went fishing this weekend, and I'm planning some stuff with each of my other kids too. So yeah, check out Coco Thursdays. And then yeah, that's my favorite thing to do is family. I love being around family and chopping up and about comedy. This stuff is cool too with Maurice. It's pretty dope.
Well, dude, the last question is not really a question. It's just kind of a shout out. June Von Colson said she had lunch with you in 2019 at a CCA event. She said that she'll probably never forget it because you helped her identify who her people are.
Boom. Way to go after it, June. Like, for real. I remember that conversation because it's so important that people find their people. But the fact that you ran with it and you digging into it and you didn't take that thing lightly, that really, really blesses me a lot. Like, that helps encourage me to continue to encourage people like we just did with Cynthia about finding her people. So thank you for that. Like, I don't take that lightly, for real. Good stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking with comedian actor Michael Jr. on the Maurice Brown Show. If you have enjoyed watching this, like it and share it, and subscribe to the Maurice Brown Comedy Channel. More importantly, follow Michael Jr. On Instagram,
I don't
Twitter,
know if that's
Facebook.
more important. I don't know if that's more important.
Sure it is, Mike. That's no question. Believe me, just take my word for it. Anyway, but Mike, dude, I really appreciate you being on the show. And look, if you guys are coming in on the end and you're like, I missed it, tomorrow about midday, you can see the entire interview on the Creative Motion Network on Roku TV. Michael Jr. on the Maurice Brown Show. Michael, once again, I know you're busy. I appreciate you hanging out a little bit longer than planned. What was that, bro?
If you say they could see it tomorrow and they watch it tomorrow, you're going to say they can see it tomorrow again. And then it's just going to keep looping. Because then they're going to be like, you're just going to be like, I could see it tomorrow. And then they're going to show up and be like, oh, I could see it tomorrow. I could see it. This is what's happening in my head way more often than I wanted to.
But it's all good, though, because I love the idea. That would be a great thing. Once again, and Mike, look, man, thanks again. I can't thank you enough for being on and for hanging out a little bit longer than planned, being gracious enough to take some questions. I really appreciate that, man.
Thanks for being awesome, man. I appreciate you, bro.
Hey, I appreciate you, man. May the peace of Christ be with you and your family, brother. God bless you.
All right, cool, y'all. Deuces. Bye.